She never meant for it to feel like more than a joke. Just a bit of playful trouble. Just a moment meant to fluster him, not unravel the quiet, dangerous longing she had been trying to ignore for months. But the second she swung a leg over his lap, the second she felt his breath hitch, everything inside her froze. His hands, which had always stayed safely at his sides, lifted just slightly, as though fighting an instinct he had buried deep. And in the thin sliver of space between their mouths, something shifted. Something neither of them had planned. Something that felt like a spark leaping the gap between worlds. She had straddled him thinking it would be harmless fun. But the look in his eyes told her she had just stepped into something much, much deeper. And she wasn't sure she wanted to climb back out. Ilara had never been great at resisting impulses. Zyphorians weren't built that way. Her species felt emotions in amplified waves, the way a human might feel a storm gathering miles away. And from the moment she met him, she sensed the pull. Kale was grounded. Human. The opposite of her chaotic, high-frequency energy. Maybe that's why she kept drifting toward him, like a comet trapped in someone else's orbit. But she never meant to show him how strongly she felt. Not until today. The Starliner hummed around them, engines vibrating through the lounge floor. Outside the panoramic windows, a swirl of purple nebulae drifted past like slow-moving ink. Most passengers were asleep or busy at the midnight gala farther down the ship. Kale had chosen the quiet lounge instead, and Ilara, well, she chose him. He sat on the couch with a datapad balanced on his knee, brow furrowed in that way she pretended she didn't find irresistibly adorable. He was studying galactic maps like always, planning routes, tracing star paths humans could barely comprehend without tech. Kale was precise like that. Thoughtful. Careful. She was none of those things. Maybe that's why she decided to pounce. He didn't hear her come up behind him. She moved silently. Zyphorians were light on their feet, so when she hopped onto the couch and swung a leg over him, settling onto his lap like it was her natural throne, Kale jerked upward, datapad flying out of his hand and clattering to the floor. Ilara. His breath stuttered. What are you? Relax, she teased, placing a finger gently against his lips before he could finish. You looked tense. I'm helping. She expected him to laugh, maybe blush a little. Humans did that around her often enough. But Kale didn't laugh. His chest rose sharply, eyes locked on hers, and she felt the air change as though someone had dimmed every star outside the ship, narrowing the world until it existed only between them. Ilara, he said again, softer this time, voice edged with something almost fragile. You can't just do this. Why not? She whispered back, playful, but her heart was hammering far too fast. You don't like it. That's not the problem. His hands were still suspended in midair, not touching her, not holding her. But the way his fingers trembled told her everything. He wanted to. Badly. And that tiny, unintentional confession sent a rush of heat through her, Zyphorian emotion amplifying in a wave that nearly stole her breath. You're shaking, she murmured. His laugh came out tight and uncertain. Because you're sitting on me, Ilara. She tilted her head. You've never minded me being close before. Close is different from. His eyes dipped downward, then snapped back up as if afraid of what she'd think if he lingered. From this. Her smile faltered for the first time. She knew how humans saw Zyphorians, otherworldly, unpredictable, too intense. She'd always played into the stereotype just to keep things light. Never serious. Never vulnerable. Kale, she said softly, searching his eyes, am I making you uncomfortable? That's the thing, he breathed, voice barely audible. You're making me anything but uncomfortable. Her pulse spiked so hard she was sure he could feel it against him. She shifted slightly, and Kale inhaled sharply, too sharply. The sound wasn't lustful or crude, it was startled, honest, almost like he'd spent months holding something back and her movement cracked whatever wall he'd built around it. She froze. Not because she was afraid, but because she realized something she never expected. He had been hiding feelings, too. Deep ones. A warm ache spread through her chest, tender and terrifying. She lowered her voice. Kale, why didn't you tell me? His eyes softened, and for a moment the universe outside the windows seemed to quiet, as if waiting for his answer. Because you're you, he said. Wild. Brilliant. Impossible. You draw attention everywhere you go. And me. I'm just a guy from a blue planet with too many rules and not enough courage. That's not true, she whispered. You don't understand. He swallowed, throat tightening. I didn't say anything because if I admitted how much I wanted you, how much I want you right now, I was afraid I'd lose control. And you deserve better than someone who can't think straight around you. Her breath caught. She had come here to tease him. To play. To feel his heartbeat jump and pretend she didn't care. But now everything inside her felt raw and exposed, as if the entire galaxy shifted under her. Kale, she whispered, leaning in so close she could feel his breath brush her cheek, you're shaking because you care. Not because you're losing control. His hands finally touched her lightly, timidly, settling on her waist like she might vanish if he held too tightly. The moment his skin met hers, she felt a spark pulse through both of them, something deep and electric. Elara, he murmured, voice unsteady, tell me to stop. Please. Because if you don't. She felt the rest of the sentence in the quiet space between their heartbeats. If you don't, I won't be able to pretend anymore. She didn't tell him to stop. Instead, she leaned forward, her forehead resting against his, eyes fluttering shut as a wave of warmth pressed between them. The nebula outside glowed brighter, casting shifting purples and blues over their faces. Kale, she whispered, trembling in a way she never had before, I don't want you to pretend. His breath shook. And for the first time since she met him, Kale didn't pull away. He pulled her closer. The starliner hummed. Her pulse raced. And somewhere deep in the ship's quiet corridors, a warning light blinked to life unnoticed by both of them. Their moment was real. Their feelings undeniable. But danger, like gravity, had already begun its silent pull. Kale didn't let go of her. Even as the starliner hummed with its steady rhythm and the nebula outside washed the room in soft violet light, his hands stayed at her waist like a promise he wasn't ready to break. Elara could feel the shift in him, the unraveling of restraint he had carried for so long, the warmth of someone who had finally stopped pretending. But beneath the glow of their closeness, a faint vibration trembled through the floor. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. Yet enough to make the hairs on her arms rise. Elara, Kale murmured, pulling back just enough to search her eyes, I didn't mean for this to happen now. Not like this. She breathed out a shaky laugh. I didn't really plan the timing either. That's the problem, he said gently. You always leap first. And you always hesitate, she countered softly. Maybe somewhere between us is the perfect balance. His lips parted as though he'd never heard something so disarmingly simple. The tension in his shoulders eased. His thumb brushed her hip, a barely there movement, but one that made her pulse trip over itself. There it was again, that soft tremor in his touch. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Longing. She couldn't pull away now. Not when the space between them had finally dissolved. Not when every heartbeat felt like a confession. And yet, the strange vibration beneath the deck thrummed again. Longer this time. A subtle warning. Kale noticed it too. She felt the shift in his posture, the way he instinctively listened to the ship's quiet mechanisms like a seasoned traveler who'd heard one too many cautionary tales. That wasn't normal, he said. Probably a systems recalibration, Elara offered quickly, leaning in so the weight of his hands wouldn't drift away. Starliners do that every few hours. Kale didn't look convinced. But when her forehead brushed his, when her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, he exhaled and let the worry slip for just a moment. Every time I think I've got control around you, he whispered, you do something that makes me lose it all over again. Good, she breathed. You over-control everything. And you under-control everything. That's why we work. He let out a soft laugh, the kind he always tried to hide. She felt it vibrate through his chest, warm and unguarded. Elara slid her hands slowly up his shoulders, marveling at the way he leaned into her touch like someone who'd been starved of affection. It made her chest tighten. How long had he been holding this back? As she drew her fingers gently along his neck, Kale's eyes half-lidded, his breath catching. He looked at her with an intensity that made her feel weightless, as if every nebula in the galaxy had paused to witness the moment. Ilara, he whispered again, but her name sounded different now. Like a secret. Like something precious. She moved closer, the warmth between them deepening, her pulse syncing with his until the lights flickered. Just once. Barely a second. But enough to snap the air. Kale straightened. Okay, that was definitely not normal. Ilara swallowed her irritation. Why now? Why the universe loved disrupting her rare moments of emotional honesty was one of life's great cosmic jokes. It's probably nothing, she said, cupping his jaw so he wouldn't turn away. Just a glitch. The ship hummed again. Louder. A deeper vibration that rolled through the walls like a distant growl. Kale gently lifted her off his lap and set her beside him, though his hand lingered on her knee as if he needed the reassurance of touch. Ilara, listen to that, he said quietly. She opened her mouth to dismiss it, but then she heard it. Not just mechanical vibrations. Footsteps. Rapid ones. Coming from the corridor outside the lounge. Kale stood. Something's wrong. She followed him, heartbeat jittering. The nebula's soft glow suddenly felt too calm, too serene for whatever tension had just gripped the ship. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped right outside the lounge doors. Ilara, Kale murmured, voice low, stay close to me. As if I ever don't. The doors slid open with a hiss. A man staggered in, a crew member, breathless, eyes wide with panic. His uniform was ripped at the shoulder, a smear of dark grease across his cheek. Is everything all right? Kale asked, stepping forward. The crewman shook his head violently. No, you need to get to your cabin, both of you. Now. Ilara stepped closer. What happened? The Starliner picked up an unauthorized vessel on long-range scan. Small, fast, and running silent. We thought it was debris until it changed trajectory. He swallowed hard. It's tracking us. Kale's hand found hers instinctively. Pirates? He asked. The crewman's silence was all the confirmation they needed. The air thinned around them. Why didn't the captain announce a lockdown? Kale demanded. Because we don't want a ship-wide panic, the crewman said tightly. Please, get to your cabin. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone unless you hear an all clear. Ilara stepped forward, her pulse a sharp drumbeat. Wait. How close are they? The crewman's face tightened. Close enough. He sprinted out before she could ask more. The doors hissed shut again. Kale turned to her, and she saw the shift in him. The warmth between them still glowed, but now it was wrapped in a coil of protectiveness so fierce it nearly made her breath catch. Ilara, he said softly, gripping her shoulders, we need to move. Kale. This isn't a joke. If they board. I know, she whispered. But even with danger tightening around them, the way he held her, steady, warm, unshaken, sparked something deeper than fear. Something that frightened her more than the pirates ever could. Because for the first time, she realized Kale wasn't just someone who cared about her. He was someone she could lose. And that possibility hit her like a meteor. Come on, he murmured. I won't let anything happen to you. A soft tremor ran through her, not from danger, but from how utterly she believed him. They ran through the corridor together, hands locked, hearts pounding, the Starliner humming like a living thing bracing for impact. And somewhere far behind them, beyond the nebula's glow, a small dark vessel drifted closer, hungry, silent, and closing the distance with every passing second. They didn't stop running until the corridor curved into a quieter wing of the Starliner, where the lights were dimmer and the hum of the engines vibrated through the floor like a distant heartbeat. Ilara could feel Kale's pulse racing through his grip, yet his hand didn't loosen for even a second. If anything, he held her tighter the closer they got to their shared cabin. But it wasn't just fear driving him, she could feel the electricity of what had happened between them still simmering beneath his skin. Every shared glance, every breathless moment they stole while sprinting through the ship, carried the remnants of the intimacy they hadn't had time to explore. The fire hadn't gone out. It had simply been interrupted. A sharp tremor shook the deck beneath their feet. Not ship vibration. Impact. Kale yanked her to the wall instinctively, shielding her with his body. The lights flickered. A distant alarm chimed once, then cut abruptly, replaced with eerie silence. That wasn't atmospheric pressure, Kale whispered. They hit the hull. They're testing our shields, Elara murmured, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. Seeing how we react. Kale looked down at her, eyes fierce. We can't be in the open when they decide to do more than test. He grabbed her hand again, pulling her down the narrow auxiliary passage. Elara followed, but her heart was thrumming in a way that had nothing to do with danger. He was so different now. Focused, protective, but also raw. Unmasked. Like their moment in the lounge had stripped away every hesitation he'd ever had around her. They reached their cabin door, and Kale keyed in the emergency lock. As soon as it slid shut behind them, silence fell like a blanket, thick, heavy, suffocating. The cabin lights dimmed on their own as the ship entered its first layer lockdown. A soft blue glow washed over the room, making Kale look almost unreal in its light. He pressed his back to the door, chest heaving as he listened. Then he met her eyes. Elara, he said softly, are you all right? She wasn't. Not at all. But she nodded. You, she whispered. He shook his head once, breath trembling. No. Not when you're in danger. She approached him slowly, the tension in the air practically crackling. Kale didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her with that same mix of longing and restraint that had nearly pulled her under before. You said something earlier, she murmured. Back in the lounge. He swallowed hard. I said a lot of things. You said you were afraid you'd lose control around me. His gaze deepened, warm, conflicted, desperate. I meant it. Why? She asked gently. Why is losing control around me such a bad thing? He exhaled shakily, lifting a hand to brush her cheek. The touch was warm, careful, the way someone touches something they're afraid they don't deserve. Because I've wanted you from the moment we met, he whispered. And I didn't trust myself not to want you too much. Her pulse fluttered. What if I want you just as much? She breathed. His eyes flickered, hope igniting in a way that felt almost dangerous. Elara, her name came out like a plea. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, she said, stepping closer until she could feel the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palms. I do. His hands slid slowly to her waist, fingertips grazing her hips with a quiet reverence that made her shiver. He pulled her closer, not yanking, not taking, just surrendering. But just as she leaned in, ready to close the distance, a metallic clang rang out somewhere beyond the cabin wall. Kale tensed instantly. That was in the starboard docking ring, he murmured. Too close. She felt the fear return, sharp, cold, but it mixed with something warmer when he wrapped an arm around her and guided her to the center of the room. Elara, listen to me, he said, cupping her face. If they breach this ship, I need you to stay behind me. No arguments. Her eyes softened despite the danger clawing at them from outside the cabin. You can't protect me alone. Maybe not, he admitted, voice cracking slightly. But I'll damn well try. She touched his lips with her thumb, feeling his breath hitch. He leaned into the touch unconsciously, a small, vulnerable movement that hit her harder than any pirate threat ever could. Kale, she whispered, you're not losing control. You're finally letting yourself feel something real. His eyes fluttered shut. You terrify me. Good, she said softly. You terrify me too. He opened his eyes again, and the honesty there nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. Elara, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. In case. Don't, she cut in. We're not doing goodbyes. But if something happens. Kale. Her voice softened to a whisper. We're not dying tonight. Before he could argue, a new sound sliced through the room, a high-pitched frequency that made her blood run cold. Grappling hooks, she realized. They're latching onto the hull. Kale stiffened. They're preparing to board. Suddenly the proximity of their bodies wasn't just romantic tension, it was survival. He pulled her into his chest, breathing hard against her hair as the ship groaned under the strain of the magnetic clamps outside. Elara, he said again, but this time his voice had changed, lower, rougher, filled with something that sounded a lot like desperation. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she whispered fiercely. I swear you won't. He kissed her forehead, a soft, trembling brush of lips that said everything he hadn't dared to before. The lights flickered again. The hull moaned. The frequency whined sharper. The pirates were almost through. Cale pulled away just enough to meet her gaze. His hands cradled her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks like he was memorizing her features. "Ilara, if they come through that door, we fight," she said. He smiled, small, aching, full of love he hadn't admitted until now. "Yes," he whispered. "We fight." She leaned into him, her forehead touching his, and for a moment, a single fragile, stolen heartbeat, she let herself feel the full weight of what had grown between them. Then the sound came. A deafening screech as metal met metal. A slam. A burst of sparks through the ventilation grate. Cale's arms tightened around her. The pirates had breached the ship. And this time, neither of them could run. The first thing Ilara felt was Cale's hand tightening around hers. Not in panic, but in a silent vow. A promise that no matter what was on the other side of that breach, he would not let her go. The cabin lights flickered violently as the vent above them rattled. A shower of sparks burst through the grate, scattering across the floor like falling stars. Cale stepped in front of her, jaw clenched, back rigid with fear he refused to show. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Ilara almost laughed. Even now, in the edge of danger, he was still the man who thought she needed protecting. Maybe she did. But not because she was weak. Because losing him would break something inside her she wasn't prepared to face. The vent shrieked again. Then something slammed against it from the other side. Cale braced, spreading his stance. Ilara's pulse thundered in her ears. Then the grate exploded inward. A masked figure dropped into the room with a heavy thud, landing in a crouch. He was armored head to toe, slim, agile, a pirate scout. His visor flickered as he scanned the cabin. Cale shoved Ilara gently behind him. "Don't come any closer." The pirate straightened slowly. "We don't want trouble, unless we're forced." His modulated voice echoed coldly across the room. Ilara sensed Cale's breath quicken. Not with fear, but fury. "You breached a civilian starliner," he said. "That's already trouble." The pirate tilted his head. "We're not here for the passengers." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Then what are you here for?" He turned toward her, and his visor glowed faint crimson. "You." Cale stepped sideways, blocking the pirate's view of her. "Like hell." The pirate didn't bother arguing. He charged. Cale moved before Ilara could warn him. He grabbed the attacker's arm, twisting it downward, and slammed him into the wall with a strength that startled even her. Cale wasn't a soldier, wasn't a fighter. But in that moment, raw adrenaline and the need to protect her transformed him. The pirate recovered quickly, swinging a blade-like device at Cale's ribs. Ilara reacted faster. A surge of blue energy rippled through her fingertips, instinctual, unrestrained, and she thrust her hand forward. A pulse of Zyphorian kinetic force slammed into the pirate's chest, launching him across the cabin. He crashed into the opposite wall, slumping to the floor. Cale turned, wide-eyed. "Ilara, how did you?" "I told you," she breathed, chest rising and falling. "You can't protect me alone." He stared at her, not with fear, but with awe. "You've been hiding that." "I hide a lot of things," she said softly. "But not from you." "Not anymore." Cale stepped closer, touching her cheek with trembling fingers. "Ilara, I." The door panel erupted in sparks. Both of them spun around. More pirates. Heavier footsteps. Multiple shadows shifting behind the frosted glass. They didn't have long. "Ilara," Cale whispered urgently, "you have to run." She shook her head instantly. "I'm not leaving you. I'll hold them off." No, her voice trembled with a fierce, painful certainty. "Cale, I didn't realize it until tonight, but you're my anchor. My calm. My gravity. I'm not running from that." He swallowed hard, chest rising with a trembling breath. "I love you." The words fell out like something he'd been carrying for far too long. Something he couldn't hold back anymore. Her heart cracked open. She pulled him into her, kissing him with a desperation that tasted like fear and longing and truth. His hands cupped her face, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss like he needed it to breathe. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips, voice shaking. "I always have." The door jolted violently. The lock sparked. They had seconds. Kale pressed his forehead to hers. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, she echoed. The door blew open, a blinding flash of sparks and smoke. Figures stormed in, weapons raised. But Ilara felt something awaken inside her. Something deeper than fear. Deeper than instinct. A Zyphorian's heart wasn't like a human's. When it bonded, it amplified everything around it. Emotion. Strength. Will. And right now, her heart was bonded to Kale. The energy pulsed through her veins, crackling across her skin in blue currents. Kale felt it too. She saw the moment the shock flickered across his face. Ilara. But she didn't wait. She stepped forward, hands glowing, and thrust both palms outward. A shockwave of crackling blue light burst from her, sweeping across the room. It slammed into the pirates, knocking them backwards like rag dolls. Their weapons scattered. Their armor flickered. Kale stared. You can do that. Ilara exhaled, shaking. Only when I feel too much. And right now, he breathed. She turned to him, eyes shimmering. Right now I feel everything. More pirates appeared in the hallway, but the moment they saw the glow radiating from her, they hesitated. Backed up. Whispered frantic commands into their comms. They weren't prepared for her. And they knew it. Kale grabbed her hand. We have to get to the escape pods before they regroup. They'll try to cut us off, she warned. Then they'll fail, he said, voice steady with a courage that made her chest ache. Because they don't have you. She felt her throat tighten. They ran, not away from danger, but toward survival, toward freedom, toward whatever future waited beyond the chaos of this night. Sirens blared through the corridors. The ship shuddered under the strain of the external clamps. But Kale never let go of her hand. Not once. They reached the pod bay just as another tremor shook the ship. Ilara shoved Kale inside first, then climbed in after him. The hatch sealed. The pod detached in a burst of propulsion. Through the viewport, she saw the Starliner shrinking behind them, glimmering with emergency lights, surrounded by the silhouettes of pirate vessels. Kale wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if the universe might try to steal her away again. You saved us, he whispered. She looked up at him, brushing her fingers along his jaw. No. We saved each other. Outside, the nebula's colors washed over the escape pod, purples, blues, shimmering gold. A quiet moment in the drifting chaos of space. Kale rested his forehead against hers. Wherever we land, whatever comes next. I'm staying with you. She smiled softly, letting the truth settle into her bones. Good. Because I'm not letting go. He kissed her again, slow, certain, without fear this time. And somewhere in the vast, star-streaked silence, the galaxy opened before them, dangerous, unpredictable, beautiful. But for the first time, neither of them felt alone. They had each other. And that was more powerful than any threat the stars could hold.